because I think that people, they can come together and your friendships, your found families, and your actual families you grow up in can be a source of hope in times like this. And that's, I think, that was a major part of the book, story of what I was trying to tell.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanty Show.
Sean, is Craig in Alexander?
Is he in Alexander or an Alexander?
An Alexander. Is Craig in Alexander?
I don't know that Craig has committed violence against anybody, but he is very judgmental. And if we go by the rules of this book, just being judgmental is not enough to make you an Alexander, although it might make you an incendiary.
Good answer.
Very true.
Yeah. I'm Sean.
I'm Paul.
And today we are joined by the amazing author and genre grapevine guru. Say that 10 times fast. Holy cow, that needs to be your title on a shirt. Genre grapevine guru. Oh man.
Wow.
Jason Sanford, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Jason Sanford is an award-winning author and full member of SIFWA, born and raised in the American South, which you might be able to tell. And currently living in the Midwestern parts of the United States. His life's adventure includes work as an archaeologist, a journalist, a Peace Corps volunteer. He has published dozens of short stories. 2 collections of those include Never Never Stories, which I have, Heaven's Touch, and Other Science Fiction Dreams, which I have. Jason's first novel, Plague Birds, which I have, and I believe is signed by you, Jason. So thank you. That one was released late 2021 by Apex. And then we have another beauty coming out here, which is We Who Hunt Alexanders, and that's the one we're going to be talking about today.
But before we get into our discussion with Jason about We Who Hunt Alexanders, this is a reminder to our listeners to please share your questions and comments with us at skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions or hit us up on social media. If you aren't already, join us on Twitch for Sean's Alphabet streams every Friday at 7 p.m. to be part of our interactive live streaming show format, like right now. Finally, be sure to review and spread the word about our ridiculous show. Help support us through our Patreon, be part of our Tortoise Cinema polls, live watches, and other special Patreon-only events on Discord, like Monday, where we're going to have a genre dispatch for patrons only with Jason Sanford.
Well, perfect. So, Jason, we have to start with the obvious question. What is We Who Hunt Alexanders?
Well, it's a novella, short novel for people who don't like that term. Dark fantasy, kind of gothic dark fantasy / I love the terms. I've heard some people who've reviewed it called it cozy horror. So it's not basically. My writings always keep a sense of hope. So I guess that made it more cozy on the horror side. Basically, it's about a monster. Her name's Amelia. She's growing up with her mother, and they're what we call rippers, who basically they're a type of monster that can only feed on violent people who have so hurt so many others that they burned away their soul. You do that, you are what they call an Alexander, and you are on the menu. So it's basically her growing up and trying to accept that she's neurodiverse, what we would call neurodiverse. She is different from all the other rippers. And she's trying to figure out her place in a world where there are book burnings, people trying to kill her, hurt other people. Basically, it's a 19th century Gothic version of present times.
Huh.
So that would be the story in a nutshell.
So let's talk about the big thing. So right from the start, this is, as you say, it's a story about monsters, rippers. And while they do eat people, because they're delicious and crunchy, they're not inherently bad. They're sort of like a natural reaction to the sort of world. And obviously Amelia gets rather complicated because of her relationships with other characters. And so I kind of want to start with a question about trying to explore the monster while making the monster like less monstrous.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a major focus is that, who is the true monsters in the world in our story? Often you look around the world and you're like, wow, everybody's screaming that that person's the monster, but they maybe hurt one person, but I see these other monsters who are screaming and they're hurting a lot more people. It's trying to say who are the true monsters in the world. In Amelia's case, and her mother and the other Rippers, I mean, yes, like you said, they are a natural force. They're kind of a reaction against against humans who've hurt so many others that nature, so to speak, says, oh, we have a solution to that. But times have changed. That's a major focus of the book is that, the Rippers are very old fashioned, old times. Amelia's mother, they live for thousands of years and unless they get hunted down and killed. And, the world has changed. And how Amelia sees the world, we can talk about that more later, but, she sees it in a different way. And is that a good thing as she thinks, or as the other Rippers think, is there something wrong with her and she needs to basically be put down?
This is good. This might be a later question. I'm going to jump into it now because you mentioned plague birds before. What fascinates you with about having, for lack of a better word, agents of vengeance or revenge? Like you have in plague, like you have the plague birds in plague birds, and here you have the Rippers, and they're very different sorts of agents of vengeance and retribution, but there are parallels you can make. So what fascinates you? Because now you've done it twice. What fascinates you by making this sort of monster that acts in this vengeful way for the good of a society or good of AIs or good of anything?
No, that's a great point, and I got to be honest. I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned that, and I'm like, as you were talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I have done that quite a few times now. I think it comes back. I told you that in the story, this is a very neurodiverse story. Amelia, basically, and all the Rippers up to her only feel basically one emotion, anger, which helps if you are an agent of vengeance. She feels every human emotion. So to them, she is neurodiverse. She is different. There's something, quote, wrong with her. I'm on the autistic spectrum. I have what they used to call Asperger's. I also have ADHD. Just throw that in there for the fun, too. And as you said that, it clicked with me. Yeah, that's one thing I've always seen is trying to both understand my place in the world, why I had difficulty fitting in. And part of that, I see being on the spectrum, being neurodiverse, I've always kind of felt like an outsider. So I'm watching the world trying to understand it. And as I watch the world, one thing that I've always noticed is why do people get away with hurting others? I see all this stuff, why do people get to do that and hurt someone, either physically, mentally, different ways of hurting, and there's no repercussions. So I think part of it, I'm fascinated by, forces of nature where, what, you don't get to do this stuff, or there's repercussions. So yeah, I think that all ties in together, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of spitballing my understanding of this because I hadn't really thought about it till you mentioned, I wrote down Agents of Vengeance. So I'm gonna be up all night thinking about that now, Paul.
Stay not up.
Thank you very much. I'll be saying your name over and over as I don't fall asleep tonight, trying to contemplate myself and my love of Agents of Vengeance.
That's the next collection you'll release, Agents of Vengeance. Well, let's kind of, I guess, follow in on this. There is a question here that I'm sure Paul has a different way of approaching this, but I was also thinking about a lot of the characters that are Alexanders, right? In the universe that you've created here, Alexanders, as you pointed out, are these people who basically like burned away their soul by doing so much harm to others, and they become this sort of new human, I guess, a soulless human, thus an Alexander. And so many of the Alexanders in this story that we meet are men. The very first one we meet, I don't feel like I'm ruining it because it's like the 5th page, I think you find out about them, is literally a man who commits domestic violence against his children and his wife. And this is painted to us very clearly because, as you pointed out, right, the Rippers can experience the emotion. They feel these emotions, and part of that is also like experiencing, I don't know if I would say quite like the memory, but they can kind of have a sense of what made them become Alexanders. And so the question I'm getting at is, given that frequency of men as being these very violent figures, human men being violent figures, was that something you were kind of thinking about as you were writing this, or did it kind of just come naturally, or is this another one of those where we we noticed the thing you didn't notice?
No, that was deliberate. I mean, the book, I do make a point of saying that, not all the Alexanders, the people who do so much harm to others that they burn away their soul, not all of them are men. But in the story, Amelia's mother explains to her daughter, basically saying, it's because men get more opportunities in this world to do this. So it's not, they do kill, I think there's one or two female Alexanders who get their just desserts in the story, but it's like Amelia's mother says, in our, at least where we are right now in this society, men get more opportunities to hurt others in this way, be violent against others. Essentially, it's not just, they're not hunting down people who mentally hurt someone. They're hunting down people who've done a lot of violence against other people, up to and including killing people. So yeah, that's kind of basically it. But it's not exclusive to that. But yeah, and I think that's true in our world now too. Men get a lot more opportunity to hurt others. And I witnessed in my life, men get away with it a lot more too. It's almost an expectation. Well, that was, that's just boys being boys, or, it's, they're just, just letting off some steam, that kind of thing, so, it doesn't mean women don't do the same. Please. No. People can be bad. But yeah, unfortunately, as Amelia's mother said, men get a lot more opportunity to do that.
I wonder if some part of that is that in this story, you do paint, in a couple of instances, characters with immense social power. So there's like a billionaire is
Correct.
One of these examples, or this mansion guy. I call him a billionaire. I don't know if he actually has $1 billion, but right, very rich person who can do extraordinary levels of violence. And I guess maybe it's less about explicitly like men are inherently like this, but more about the power that has been afforded in a hypermasculine society gives men more opportunities as a consequence.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was going at. It's, and it doesn't mean there aren't powerful women who can hurt others too. Absolutely. But for the purposes of the story, and especially there was I grew up in a very conservative church in the rural South. And I witnessed, the men that were in power, and it was only men in that church who were allowed to have power hurting others, so I witnessed this too. And the book has a major religious the big baddie is a bishop, basically a demon hunter for the church who's trying to hunt down the rippers. So, and there's reasons I put that in there. It's what I saw growing up again.
Yeah.
I'm writing this book about today, and it's definitely my scream about what I see going on in the world now. But I hate to say it, it's also what I'm seeing now is stuff I saw growing up, and it's nothing, sadly, it's, I think, part of the human condition.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised the religious element, because as you were kind of mentioning, men in power within a church of some description, it made me realize like there are some major branches of Christianity in the United States that have only recently, as in within the last year, voted to allow women to serve in positions of power other than being like whatever's the equivalent of like an altar boy, right? And so it very acutely was in because my mom is going to one of these churches that recently voted to like let gay people kind of like be normal in the church. Right? Those kinds of things are like still sort of being hashed out in religious culture within the United States, like as we speak.
No, I'd say hashed out would be optimistic.
True.
I hate to say, especially and around the world. I mean, there's some religions and aspects of religious organizations are moving forward and with that, and some are not. Some are digging in harder than ever. So yeah, and I that was really part of the reason I wrote this, is that unquestioned power to anyone, it's the famous power corrupts, but it's especially corrupting when the people who have the power are using their power to hurt others. And I think that's a major part. Like I said, I mentioned that the book is, some people have called it cozy horror, because I do have a sense of optimism. I don't want to seem like the book is a downer, because I think that people, they can come together and they can, your friendships, your found families, and your actual families you grow up in can be a source of hope in times like this. And that's, I think, that was a major part of the book, of story of what I was trying to tell.
I've got a couple ways I want to go from this, but I'll pick up the horror tab. So I wanted you to talk about since this is not your first rodeo in horror, the importance of using horror as a subgenre to explore these sorts of questions in science fiction. Why do you think horror is suited for being a vehicle for that?
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do a little digression. I was in Spain in July for the Celsius 232 festival, which I'm gonna write an essay about it. It was wonderful. The translation of Plague Birds was released in Spain earlier this year, and I remember they did a panel about the book, and they asked, "Why do you love blood so much?" And it's funny because my youngest son is living and working in Spain, and he's sitting in the audience. It was a good sized audience, and he's laughing because he's like, "Oh, have fun with this one, Dad." And what I said then was basically, I believe blood really does clarify issues in society a lot, especially in storytelling. When you have when you have a story that you're trying to cut to the heart of what human issues are about, blood is a divider. Blood is, a revealer. Blood shows so much more than just saying, "Oh, you hurt my feelings," or "Oh, you made me mad," or I'm upset. When there's blood there, it takes the story to the extreme. And I like that. I like, for storytelling purposes, I like to push a story to the extreme. So that would be my answer on that. And for science fiction, I think, mixing in you were asking about horror and science fiction. I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question. Is that bringing that aspect into science fiction can really, and fantasy can really help clarify the story too, and kind of purify it to the essence of what you're trying to get across to the reader.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you a fan of Event Horizon, Jason?
The movie?
The movie, yes.
Oh yes, I love that. It's a classic in my opinion.
I agree.
It's disturbing as
Good
hell.
man.
Yes, it is.
I was just thinking the other day, I was watching, I saw it pop up on one of the streaming services. I'm like, I need to rewatch it. And I was a little hesitant. I haven't done it yet, but maybe now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to rewatch it to see how well it holds up.
Oh, it still holds up. It's still amazing.
Oh, it does.
I've seen it recently,
Then
and I watch it, I don't know, maybe once a year.
Oh, wow.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen it in a few decades, but it made a mark. It made a real mark, and I wish there were more stories like that.
I agree.
I'm sorry, more films like that, I should say.
Well, story still applies, I think. It's just a visual story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Paul. I didn't mean to interrupt your moment.
That's with the Event Horizon discussion, but yeah, that's fine. So another thing I want to pick up from before is, since I happen to currently be reading a book on masculinity in science fiction, I wanted you to talk about the two kinds of toxic masculinity we have in this book. We not only have the Alexanders, but we also have the incendiaries. And I wanted you to talk about how you developed these two classes of toxic masculinity and how you basically differentiate them, because it becomes kind of spoilery plot important that someone is one and not the other, and how you came up with these categories and the importance of how they are alike but yet different.
So I was kind of mimicking society in a way, to be honest, or at least how I've observed society in my time on this planet. Is we condemn almost every society, to my knowledge, condemns to various degrees violence against other people. If I walk into a room and punch one of you, I'm getting my butt arrested, okay? Here in the United States. Theoretically, I should be, okay? Now, that's what should happen, and if I hurt or kill someone, unless it's in self-defense, is the same thing. So that's a personal level of violence. Self-defense is not, I shouldn't even brought that up, because that's a different level of defending yourself. But if you're going out and violently hurting other people, killing other people, you're what we call an Alexander in this book, because you are inflicting personal violence and personal hurt against other people. But then there's also people who instigate that, who urge people to go, let's go attack all those people in that other village, or let's attack and lynch people who are different from ourselves. The person who actually does that and has the blood on their hand is an Alexander, but an incendiary may convince 500 people to go and do that. The incendiary has caused more harm than the individual Alexander. But in the major plot point of the story is the Rippers are unable to kill or eat an incendiary because they're not a true Alexander. So I wanted to explore that, how, sometimes in our society we come down so quick and hard on the people, the Alexanders, the people who do interpersonal violence, but we give passes too frequently. Not always, obviously, but we sometimes look the other way at the person who stirred up that anger and hate and directed the violence for where people got killed. It's just something I wanted to explore because I think it's important to us as a to humanity and how our world goes forward, and how we deal with that. With the note that it's still a story, and I'm not advocating for Ripper type monsters to hunt down people. It is a fictional story. Let me put that out
Yeah.
there, since there are so many people in this world who seem to take my words the wrong way.
Well, I find that last sentence is so interesting to me because a lot of what you're kind of describing is that this story is in some ways a metaphor for that very real world way in which people can use words to do great amounts of harm. But also there's this element there of the difficulty societies have in dealing with that problem. Understandably so, because it's very difficult to deal with speech as a thing that can cause great harm, even though we can kind of see it obviously at the very extremes. But when we start moving further and further, it gets grayer and grayer. And it gets harder for people to see. And part of that is also like misunderstanding what people are saying, or even knowing people are going to misunderstand and using that as a tool to get the desired results, or in this case, using the righteousness of religious language in order to convince people to do immense amounts of harm. That is all sort of woven into this story. It's just, I think, very subtle because you're not like setting it in like the real world in a sense. So I think this is doing that thing I love to say about genre fiction, where especially science fiction, where like can take us outside of our real world into like a little comfort bubble, and then suddenly we have to confront a thing without any of our defenses on. And I think you're kind of doing that here.
Oh, absolutely. That was totally why I love stories and why I write stories like this, is I want people to consider things differently. That's the power of storytelling, is that people will consider, not only does a story put you into a different perspective, a different mindset, which there's really no other way in our current world to do that. Storytelling is how people are able to see other perspectives. But then you are able to consider things that you may have reflexively said, I will not even think about that. But in a story, you may think about it, and that's a famous, and honestly, I'll be honest, science fiction, fantasy, and horror that's one of their great strengths, is being able to do that. One of their is a true strength of the genres. So yeah, absolutely, that was an intention. That's why I love stories. That's why I write them. I mean, otherwise, I'm a journalist too, but journalism has limits on what you can do. Even though it is a form of storytelling, there's limits to what journalism can do. But if a fictional story, oh my, oh my.
Well, you can speculate and imagine and tear things apart and pull them in ways that where journalism, you, at least if you have ethics, are supposed to be adhering to the truth, right? Trying to, as best you can. I say that unless you don't have ethics, because there are people who use that label. And I would not consider you a journalist. I'd call you a muckraker, but that's a different question.
Well, no, I agree. I mean, I'm the same way. There are good journalists and there are bad journalists, and there's muckrakers, and there's the people who just flat out lie. So I actually believe I love good journalism. I've worked in the journalism field for decades, about 20 years now, different levels and different things. I used to be a newspaper editor and reporter. I now work my day job more behind the scenes in journalism, but I still love it deeply. I love great journalism, but I've also seen bad journalists, and I go, I hate it because they hurt the good journalist. And I'll be honest, sometimes there is a value for muckrakers. I have seen muckrakers who do good things. I've seen muckrakers who do horrific things. But there can be a place for muckrakers, but then there's the people who just stir stuff up just to hurt people and just to call the agents of chaos.
Yeah.
Can I say maybe the journalistic versions of agents of vengeance?
Oh.
So
okay. No,
I don't like those.
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that I would call them agents of vengeance, because agents of vengeance implies that they're justified.
Good point.
And I
More
feel like
more
agents of chaos is,
Yeah.
That fits better because they're not necessarily justified. I mean, I guess you could cause chaos for justified reasons, but that's not inherent in the design.
I agree. I totally agree. I was trying to pull in Paul's phrase, and I bent it too far. It just didn't work. As I said, no, but it was already out of my mouth.
That's okay.
But yeah, no, you're right. They're more agents of chaos.
Yeah, these days especially. Yeah.
But an ancillary small question to go on top of this. So what do you think your background in journalism, how has it influenced your fiction writing? How has it improved it, shaped it, altered it, refined it?
Good question. I think my journalism background has kind of tried to keep me from having too much bloat in my writing. I try to keep it lean, because journalism at some point, if you get too wordy, it's not good. But that said, I think more than that, I think journalism has really taught me that you need to find the focus of the story. You really need to find, what are you digging down? What are you trying to tell here? And you need to, journalism has taught me the importance of sharing people's voices, that voice matters. It is going out and interviewing people and meeting people through journalism. I love people. I'll be honest, I love humanity. I don't love a lot that humanity does, but I love people. And journalism has, I try to make it where even the villains in my book, the bad people, you kind of get where they're coming from or why they would do what they do. It's the old cliche that, every villain is a hero in their own mind. I don't know if I totally agree with that cliche, but, you got to at least try to show people as people, even if you disagree with what they do.
Very interesting. I'm glad you've raised this question, Paul, because I was thinking something very similar about the prose that Jason has, and you've had for a while. This isn't like yesterday you just came up with this style. But now that I think about the connection to your journalistic background, it makes a lot of sense why you write the way you write. It's a very it reminds me of Hemingway in a way that there's not a lot of wasted language. It's very tight.
It's spare. That's a negative thing, but yeah, it's polished, it's shaped, it's keenly edged.
There's no extra words. It's every word is exactly the word, and there's no other word that's supposed to be there.
Almost Flauberian in a way. Did you take a year to try to figure out I need this word? Only Flaubert could do that.
I also, for what it's worth, I rewrite heavily, and that's another thing. Journalism taught me is that rewriting is so important as a writer, and I know there's writers like Isaac Asimov who famously did not rewrite. He was like, you get it the first time and it's out there. And I remember reading his comments on that when I was young. And for years, it was like, I can't do that. And now finally I was like, oh, it's okay. Rewriting is good. That's how I find it. Not everybody does that. But yeah, I love how rewriting a story helps you distill down to the essence of the story.
Don't feel too bad. Asimov also couldn't do that. He just had enough power that he could get away with it.
Oh, I know. And there's other writers too. Yeah. It's like, I love a lot of Philip K. Dick's stories. His best ones were where he did rewrite.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
And, and the ones where he just didn't, I was like, man, I wish you'd just rewritten this once. But, it is what it is. It's how every writer finds their own path.
Yeah. I agree.
It's not a straight line. Yeah.
Since we're talking about other writers, I'm kind of curious. Obviously, journalism has influenced your writing because we just kind of talked about this. Who would you say are some of your sort of literary influences?
Well, hold on. Let me pull this out.
Uh-oh.
Ooh, sitting on my desk.
Ray makes sense.
Actually, Ray Bradbury is a big influence on my writing. And I've got others, but I want to tell a little story. I was at the Gen Con Writing Symposium in Indianapolis recently, and I got to go to visit the Ray Bradbury library and archive there. And they also have when he passed away, all his, and they have the original filing cabinets with all his stuff there, lined up all there, but they also took his office as it was when he passed away and brought it and have recreated it exactly how it was. And I may have gotten to sit at the chair and at the desk where he wrote his famous works in the late 40s and 50s.
Oh, damn.
I'm just saying. It was like, oh my goodness. So yes, Ray Bradbury for certain. For other classic authors, of the golden age, Arthur C. Clarke would be up there too for his sense of wonder. That really resonated with me. Then as I moved forward, Gibson, Ursula K. Le Guin, Samuel Delany for his short fiction really just and blew me away when I was young and still resonates with me. And then others, I mean, there's so many others. You know, you have to forgive me. Part of being on the spectrum, I have trouble. I know all this stuff, but I can't express all the books and authors that have meant so much to me. I know more recent authors, N.K. Jemisin's stories have really hit hard and in a great way. You know, and then there's so many. There's a lot of others.
Those are some hella names to get influence from too. Yeah, N.K. Jemisin, I would say, is almost like a Le Guin of our time. Just like the level of complexity in her work, I find even in her fantasy, some of her early fantasy doesn't get as much attention, I think, as it deserves, which makes me sad. I like the Killing Moon duology quite a lot, but there's just a lot of complexity in her work, which I just really appreciate. So A+ N.K. Jemisin.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, I remember the first book, novel of Jemison's I read, 100,000 Kingdoms. I was just like, and it was just like, wow. But then when I read the fifth season, no spoilers, but there's something Jemison does with point of view characters, and certain, first person, second person, all that kind of stuff. And you go, okay. And then you get towards the end, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's just a revelation. And it was like, I didn't know an author could do that. It was like, wow. So yeah, I love there's so many great genre writers, so I mean, it's hard for me to name them all, but there's some others too who I can't, bring up right now, but
that's okay.
For some reason,
no,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for some reason, it's always been like this. If you ask me, what books have you read this year that you love? I can't answer that because they're part of me and they're in there. But this is going to sound weird. How I remember stories, they kind of work their way in my mind, and they don't register in my mind as the author name and the title.
Oh, okay.
Instead, they're like, I feel this story in a certain way in my mind, and it's hard for me to quickly translate that into, oh yeah, it's this story, and then literally 5 minutes after you ask me, then it'll click in. I'll be, but then the conversation's moved on and I can't tell you.
Brains are weird. They just do weird stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
There's something I want to ask, and I know, Paul, you'll drag us back to the book in a second. A long time ago, before the dark times, when we were still hopeful about the future, there was this like brief moment where you were kind of like calling yourself sci-fi strange, and I don't want to say like you were doing this as like I want to name a genre. It was just like trying to describe like something that was going on in the genre. And I don't think that your fiction has ever stopped being strange. And I'm kind of curious, how do you feel about your Jason Sanford writing today? Like, what is your sense of yourself as a writer today?
Well, at the time, so that would have been
15 years
15
ago?
years ago? Oh my goodness. I don't want to think about that. 15 years ago. So that long ago, I did not know I was on the autistic spectrum. I'd always known that I didn't fit in. I knew I had ADHD and lovely ADHD. Just thank you. But I knew I had that, but I didn't know the being on the spectrum. There's a whole backstory there. My family knew and had hid it from me because they felt it would help me fit in. And there's a whole backstory there. So I didn't find out about that until I was after what you're talking about. And so I've always been attracted to certain types of stories. I mean, Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun series resonate heavily with me. There's certain stories that resonate with me. Those authors I named for you, for example, doesn't mean I've loved every one of their works. You know what I mean? They eat what I'm trying to say is those authors I named and others. There were certain stories that resonate with me that kind of helped me see the world in a different way. So I mask heavily. Right now I'm masking. Okay, this is performance, Jason, so to speak. This is how I am. I can do this for limited amounts of time in person. If you see me at a convention, I will go. You'll see me, and then you'll be like, "Where'd Jason go?" I had to go back to my room and recuperate for a few hours after maybe spending an hour or two around other people. I mask heavily. I learned to do that at a very young age as a survival mechanism and other stuff. I'm not going to get into all that. It's part of being on the spectrum. But there were certain stories that taught me about how the world worked, how other people worked. I still remember reading certain stories and going, that's why people do this, because I have trouble with social cues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have trouble understanding other people's motives. And that gets back to the justice thing, the agents of vengeance. I go, why do people do that and get away with that? That's not right. Anyway, so stories, science fiction, fantasy, that really helped me understand that. And certain stories, I get it. That's why people do that. Or helped me understand my place in the world, helped me survive kind of some horrific things as a kid. And I wanted to write those, and so that's my roundabout way of saying the sci-fi strange is those were the stories I resonated with, again, the stories when I was saying that some of N.K. Jemisin's early works, many other the writers who now many of them gone on to much bigger and better things, but they had a story or stories that just clicked with how I saw the world, and I love that. I wanted to share it. And in hindsight, I realized, yes, I've always written kind of weird stories, but that's because it's how my life is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, that's just how I in hindsight, I realized I was writing stories from a neurodiverse point of view, but I didn't know it back then. I didn't realize until, far into adulthood that I was on the spectrum. And then the whole story came out and the diagnosis and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, and it was not so much that it was like illuminating is what I'm trying to say. It was like, oh, now I understand my life, why I do these things, how I am. It helped me understand myself. And that would also be why there's certain types of stories I like and certain type of stories I write. Now I got to say, I try to write my stories so anyone can love them, but yeah, there's a neurodiverse heart in all the stories I write. But We Who Hunt Alexanders is very blunt about that. I would say Plague Birds was a neurodiverse novel too, but I was not naming it that at the time. But now We Who Hunt Alexanders are like, yeah, we'll take the mask off and just be blunt about this.
This is so fascinating. There's more I could ask, but like I should let Paul jump in because I could totally monopolize this of like Jason Sanford making sense of your career thing because I find this all very interesting. And it's making me want to go back and reread some things.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of self-knowledge and coming to knowledge of oneself to make myself a better person, a better writer. I applaud what you've done, Jason. It's a good thing to figure out who you are and what you really are, and that helps make you better writer, a better person. So I'm going to bring.
Well, I tried.
Go ahead.
Oh, go
ahead.
One thing, I wrote an essay not long ago, talking about that when I write my fiction, I take the mask off. I have to, so that's really at the heart of what I'm trying to do with my stories is take off the mask I'm wearing to reveal, put my true self into the stories, but also what I see in the world. And I learned to do that even before I realized exactly what it meant to be masking. Does that make sense? So it's been a process, but no, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. My stories have helped me understand myself. Stories have helped me survive. And the stories I'm writing, they help me move forward in my life. And I hope they mean something to other people too.
They do to me, but that's because I've liked your fiction for, I don't know, whatever the first story I read from you. So I've always really liked your work. And I think it's just because I like when people are a little weird in their fiction. I just like that. I don't know what it is. It's just fun. To me, I don't need things to be hard science fiction. You can get a little strange with it, and it makes me happy. This story is strange. I mean, like literally the first thing I was like, what the hell, Jason? What are you doing right now? You have these creatures that are about to eat these other things, and wait, they're just people, and they have a void other world inside them that's just full of teeth. And that's how they basically like digest their prey, is they just eats them forever. That's kind of like, it's a little weird, but also kind of amazing.
It is. I'm gonna drag us back to talking about the book. I had a completely different question, but I'm gonna chuck that one out because I feel that's now too pedestrian now because I wanted to pick up what you're talking about taking off the mask, and I want to talk a little bit more about I wanted you to talk a little bit more about the Rippers, since they do kind of are masking as humans within society, and Mom is very upset about her daughter not following those protocols. So I want to talk to you about the monsters that try to hide in plain sight, and what sort of how you're exploring that theme with our Rippers, because we have several different kinds of Rippers, and they kind of approach it different ways.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, part of it, part of the Ripper backstory is, I once worked at, I majored in anthropology, worked as an archaeology. I love history. Hence my shirt, introverted but willing to discuss archaeology. So I love history, and I love being able to develop the whole history of the Rippers. And part of it, yes, they are masking. They're masking as humans. But they're kind of a talk. Also, it's a way to talk about how we have humans who are essentially monsters in our current world. I don't mean supernatural monsters, but what they do is monstrous, and they mask. And I hate to even use that term, as everyday people. You look at some of the serial killers, the most notorious serial killers. Some of them were pretty obvious, but some of them were not. People were like, and that's that famous thing when there's that, when someone would go on one of those things we have here in the United States, where they go on a shooting rampage at work, and you would get the comments from people, "Oh, we didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming," but it was in the person all the time, and something came out, so we have monstrous tendencies in all of us, and some of us really engage in that, so it's really trying to write, the Rippers are kind of an example of how humans are, you know what I mean? But there's also, they play us, I also wanted to talk about how they play, they're trying to play a part in, as your agents of vengeance, so yeah, no, it's, did I answer your question? I kind of went on a digression.
You did answer my question. Thank you. You got something, Sean, or I'll go with something else?
Well, since we're kind of talking about monstrosity again in a different way, I don't know how much we can really talk about it without spoiling the book too much, but you do have other monstrous beings that exist in this world, and I love, there's a thing you do in this, and I hope you could kind of talk about this, but when you first start mentioning them in the story, you do the thing that like a lot of fiction does, where it's like, oh, it's this monster, and here's what we know about them, and they behave this way, and then we meet one, and it's like, no, that's not what they're like, way more complicated than you give them credit for. Even the Rippers are more complicated than sort of our assumptions, or even what Mama says, right? And so it seemed to me that in a lot of ways you were sort of constantly doing this in the story, of like these little moments where you would kind of tear down the mythology of the world, but also a little bit our mythology in our own world, because you kind of take creatures from our world too. And I don't know how much of that was a sort of very conscious activity of like, I really want to complicate these creatures, or you were trying to do something different with that, but I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this.
Well, I think part of that is no human is ever as we appear, where there's always more depth to us. There's sides of ourselves we only show around close friends or family, or even we only show when we're by ourselves. So, I mean, part of it's that. Part of it's, trying to show, people can be who they want to be. And I was trying to show some of without spoilers, I know the character you're talking about. That character is trying to do good, trying to live a good life. And, despite I believe he says, the slanders against, my kind, he's trying to live a good life. And with his family and his friends and all that kind of stuff, and trying to create a sense of hope and a sense of home in a dangerous world for people. And I think that's great. I love that. I guess that's why I love that term, cozy horror, because my stories, if you go down to it, I don't think I've ever written a story where there was no hope. I think that's the biggest thing in my writing, is that how should I put this? I'm not ignorant. I see the world. I have seen horrific things. I see, and I still see them. The world is not going a path I want it to go, but I keep a sense of hope, because I think the alternative is too bad, too horrific to consider. I think that's part of the thing I love about humans and people, is that we there are people who always keep a sense of hope no matter how bad things get. And they try to work towards that. And I think that's what reassures me that things will get better in the world, is that there are people who try to build a better world, who try to help out others, who extend the hand when someone needs one. And that's what I try to show in my stories. And I think what you're talking about is tied in with that is, for example, the Rippers, they may believe they only feel one emotion, which is anger, but Amelia feels more than that. But do they truly only feel one emotion, or is that what they've been taught? It's one of those things the story explores.
So I'm going to go back to the question I was thinking of before. So you set this in a tight point of view for Amelia. So why did you write what brought you to write the book that way?
I really wanted to try to share Amelia's point of view has a lot of echoes with my own as a neurodiverse person, and I wanted to express it. A lot of my fiction, I will be honest, is third person. But this one is, I really wanted a strong point of view because it's her point of view matters, and I think it's one that people need to see. Because I'm also trying to show that, I think I've seen that neurodiverse people are frequently put down in society. There's something wrong with you. Why don't you just act normal? There's all these things, these slurs that are said against neurodiverse people. But I think that at the heart of making this world a better place, you need neurodiverse people to be involved in that. Neurodiverse people see the world in a different way, and they can see the wrongs and see what we need to do frequently better than people who are not neurodiverse. Not always, obviously, everybody's different, but I mean, it's something you got. If we want to improve the world, you need the point of view of neurodiverse people, is what I'm trying to say. And that was a major part of why the point of view is from Amelia. Plus, I got to be honest, I liked, on the flip side of that, is she has a fun way of seeing the world, and I wanted to share that too, especially her interactions with another Ripper in the story. I had so much fun writing the little back and forth of that. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but you can do stuff like that too, and it was fun.
It dawns on me in how much we've kind of talked and mentioned the sort of neurodiverse elements in this story, that this would be a beautiful companion piece to John Wilswell's Someone You Can Build a Nest In.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, indeed.
One of my favorite novels from last year, and it won the Nebula Award too, which I was very happy to see.
It's so good. It's a very good book, and these are very different types of stories, but they have elements that are very similar. There's like someone needs to make let's do a comparison to kind of put them in conversation, not comparison, but conversation. I think it'd be so interesting to think about these two together. So I don't know, Paul, figure out how to put that on your docket. I've given you a task.
I was already thinking of a nonfiction author, Sarkea Davies, whose book on monsters. Have you read it, Jason? What's the name of that book? Now, Humans: A Monstrous History.
No, I have not.
I think it's up your alley, because when I read that book, I was thinking of Jason's book, and now that I've read We Hunt Alexander's, yes, I definitely can see that it's definitely something that you might be interested in.
I will check it out. I wrote it down. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have to start our wind down.
Oh,
sorry.
I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
We could keep you here for 10 days, but I feel like at some point you gotta have a normal life.
We're gonna get them on Monday, Sean, so we shouldn't be too greedy.
We can't be too greedy. So first, big question. I know you're probably working on something. And so what are you working on next that you're allowed to tell us about?
I'm finishing up a new book. I hope to submit it to my agent in the next month. It's if anyone has read my Blood Grain stories, it's building on that. Let me just say that. The Blood Grain stories, the first one was a finalist for the Nebula and longlisted for the Hugo. And I know people loved it, so I'm kind of pulling all the stories together, in a way. So, and there's some neurodiversity in there too.
Cool.
And weirdness. Yes, it's weird. I'll be honest. Yeah. But then, I love those stories. So that's that. Working on a nonfiction proposal I can't really talk about right now. I'm working, okay, I'll say there will be a sequel to Plague Birds coming out next year. The contract is not signed, so if I just shot myself in the foot, forgive me. But yeah, there will be a sequel, and And there's supposed to be a reissue of Plague Birds, even though it's still in print. They want to bring Apex wants to bring out a new one, a new edition. So there'll be a lot of Plague Birds next year. Let me just say that. And finally, I'm working on a novella. It's for a magazine that has published a number of my stories. They requested a story. Now, it doesn't mean they'll take it, but I have a lot to finish in the coming couple of 2 or 3 months. So I'm like,
Indeed.
And then the next question is, where can folks find you?
Absolutely. My website is jasonsanford.com. If you just Google Jason Sanford, it'll pop up. I write a column called The Genre Grapevine, where I cover the science fiction and fantasy genres and horror. And I also cover generative AI in a column that's also released through that. I cleverly called it Gen AI Grapevine. And first column I published as Gen AI Grapevine. Someone said, "Did you use generative AI to write this?" I'm like, no. So, but if you Google those things, you'll find them.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, thank you very, very much for taking time to talk to us about your book and your work. And honestly, it was really great to actually get to see you again because it's been a while.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. It's great to see y'all, and I hope to see you in person soon.
One day. One can dream. Do you want to come to Capricorn? That's in Chicago.
I'm open.
February in Chicago.
Oh, next year? Yeah, maybe another year. Is it always in Chicago?
It's always in Chicago. It never moves. And it's almost always like whatever the first full weekend of February is. It sort of shifts dates slightly, but usually early February, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I can't do it this next year, but I would like to do it one day. I've heard of it before.
Let me know.
So, I'm
in charge of programming this year because they made mistakes. So,
fortunately for next year, had to cut back on my appearances at conventions it was too much this year. Kind of overloaded it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Well, maybe the year after. We'll see.
I would love to do that.
That'd be great. I'd love to have you. Okay, folks. So if you're at home, you can let us know what you thought about this episode. If you've read the book, it is presently out, we should note. So you can get it literally right this second. You don't have to wait. You can let us know what you think about it or what about the interview or anything at skiffingfanty@gmail.com. And then you can also go to our Discord channel. We have a show discussion section in the Discord channel. If you just want to talk about the show, let us know. We are at Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, YouTube, a whole bunch of other places. You can find that at skiffingfanty.com/skiffythings. And there are links to all of that stuff there. And then again, we are live every Friday, 7 p.m. Central on Twitch at twitch.tv/alphabetstreams. And then if you do like the show, please tell people about it, share our stuff on the socials, spread the word. I don't know, throw our episodes at people on street corners. Anything at all that you could do would be lovely. And then please leave reviews. And then if you like, patreon.com/skiffingfanty, as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. And yeah.
Throw our episodes, don't throw sandwiches at people. Throwing sandwiches at people gets you in trouble. Anyway,
our episodes are digital, so they don't hurt.
Generally. But so now comes the time where we thank our Patreon supporters for supporting this ridiculous show. Supporters like Andrea the Alluring, Cameron the Chthonic, Carolyn the Benevolent, Carrie the Divine, Chris the Candescent, Dan the Transient, Daniel the Cultured, David the Debonair, JC the Jocular, Jeff the Gracious, Joseph the Jovial, Juan the Junctional, KB the Kind, Karen the Kickass, Kat the Kinematic.
And Matthew the Magnificent, Paul the Pious, Phoebe the Eloquent, Robert the Riveting, Robin the Bold, Ryan the Resilient, Sarah A. the Sensational, Sarah E. the Sublime, Sarah O. the Rapturous, Stephen the Strange, Tari the Thorough, Tanya the Triumphant, Trish the Imperturbable, and Victor the Valiant. Thank you all very, very much.
You forgot Scott the Gentleman.
What? Did I forget Scott the Gentleman? I did. Scott the Gentleman. I did not forget. I did not forget you. I'm so sorry,
You almost pulled a Hugo.
It
wasn't on the sixth page either.
Me and then I corrected it, and I immediately apologized. God, we're going to get burned for that joke.
Well, we apologize. We recognize the mistake, and we will do better.
I corrected it immediately. Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for your support. We appreciate it. I'm at SeanDuke.net. Alphabet streams on Twitch Wednesdays, Sundays, 6 p.m. Central for games and things. And then SeanDuke.net/DukeThings if you want to find all of my socials. And
you can find me, Paul Weimer, ubiquitously on the internet, except in fascist duchies, kingdoms, autarchies, and baronies as Prince Justin, PrincejVSTIN.
Oh, okay. Well, as required by the Skiffy and Viney bylaws, I must make this happy. And I'm going to take a cue from Jason on this one. I am just going to end this by saying that we're at the moment exuding an obscene amount of hope out into the world. It's just coming up like a Care Bear. You remember Care Bears? And they would like hope, and like it would like come out of its little chest or whatever. That's us right now. We are Care Bears of hope, and we're sending it out into the world. Hopefully, it brings you a little bit of joy at this moment, because the world needs a little hope right now.
It does.
So there you go. And on that note, happy ending and scene.
And scene.
If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.